The hospital bracelet cut into my wrist as I clawed at the bed sheets, my vision swimming back into focus through the haze of anesthesia. My arms reached instinctively for the small, warm weight that should have been there, finding only the hollow ache of emptiness where my baby belonged. The nurse's eyes wouldn't meet mine when I screamed. Before I start my story, I would love to know what city you are joining me from. Feel free to share it in the comments. Now, let me immerse you in this story. My fingers fumbled with the IV taped to my arm, yanking at the tubes until footsteps thundered down the corridor. 2 orderlies burst through the doorway, their hands gripping my shoulders as I thrashed against the starched white sheets. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth where I'd bitten my tongue during the emergency C-section. "Where's my baby?" The words tore from my throat raw and jagged. A doctor I'd never seen before stepped into the room, clipboard pressed against his chest like armor. His salt and pepper beard couldn't hide the tight line of his jaw. He glanced at someone standing just outside my field of vision, someone lurking in the shadows near the doorway. My mother emerged from the corner, her church dress immaculate, her purse clutched in both hands. She'd aged 10 years in the 6 hours since I'd been wheeled into surgery. Or maybe I was finally seeing her clearly for the first time. I pushed myself upright despite the searing pain that split my abdomen. The surgical staples pulled against tender flesh as I swung my legs over the side of the bed. The linoleum floor felt ice cold against my bare feet. My hospital gown hung open at the back, but I didn't care. Every instinct in my body screamed that something was catastrophically wrong. "Marilyn, you need to lie back down." The doctor moved forward, his hands outstretched. I shoved past him, my vision tunneling on my mother's face. She stepped backward, her sensible heels clicking against the floor. Her expression held something I'd never seen before. Not quite guilt, not quite defiance. Something harder and more permanent. "What did you do?" My voice dropped to a whisper more terrifying than any scream. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin the way she did every Sunday in the front pew. Her mouth opened, but the words that came out belonged to a stranger wearing my mother's skin. "I did what was necessary. You're unmarried, you're 23 years old, and you have no means to support a child." The room tilted sideways. I grabbed the metal bed frame to keep from collapsing. My surgical incision screamed protest, fresh blood seeping through the bandages and staining my gown. The doctor lunged forward to catch me, but I twisted away from his grasp. My bare feet slapped against the floor as I stumbled toward the door, one hand pressed against the wound, the other reaching for the handle. The corridor stretched endlessly in both directions, fluorescent lights burning white streaks across my retinas. I lurched forward, my left hand clamped over the bandages while my right traced along the wall for balance. Each step sent lightning bolts through my midsection. Behind me, my mother's heels clicked rapidly against the linoleum. That familiar sound that had once meant safety, discipline, Sunday dinners. Now it sounded like pursuit. I reached the nurse's station where 3 women in pastel scrubs clustered around paperwork. Their heads snapped up in unison. One dropped her clipboard. The youngest one, her name tag reading Rachel, moved toward me with professional urgency. "Ma'am, you're hemorrhaging. We need to get you back to your room." I pressed harder against my abdomen, feeling the wetness spread beneath my palm. "Where's the nursery? Where are the babies?" Rachel exchanged glances with an older nurse whose silver hair was pulled into a severe bun. The older woman picked up a phone receiver, her fingers already dialing. I didn't wait to hear who she was calling. I pushed away from the counter, my legs trembling with the effort of staying upright. The corridor branched in 3 directions. Signs pointed toward radiology, cafeteria, emergency exit. Nothing about maternity. Nothing about newborns. My mother's voice cut through the antiseptic air. "Stop this nonsense immediately. You're making a spectacle." I spun too quickly. The movement ripped something inside. I gasped, doubling over as warm blood trickled down my thigh. Through the haze of pain, I saw her standing 15 feet away, her purse clutched against her chest like armor. Her lipstick remained perfect. Not a single hair had escaped from her pinned coiffure. She looked exactly as she had every day of my childhood, immaculate, untouchable, absolutely certain of her righteousness. "Where is my baby?" I straightened incrementally, each vertebra a separate agony. She didn't answer. Her eyes shifted to something behind me. I turned to find 2 security guards approaching from opposite ends of the hall, a coordinated flanking maneuver. The one on my left was built like a linebacker, his uniform straining across his shoulders. The other was leaner, faster looking, his hand already reaching for my elbow. I bolted. My bare feet found traction on the smooth floor. I ran past a janitor's cart, past an empty gurney, past rooms where televisions murmured behind closed doors. The guards' heavier footfalls thundered behind me. My vision narrowed to a pinpoint focused on a set of double doors ahead marked, "Authorized personnel only." I hit them with my shoulder, and they swung inward. The smell struck me first. Formula and baby powder and that indefinable sweetness of newborn skin. I stumbled into a dimly lit corridor lined with windows. Behind the glass, rows of plastic bassinets held tiny bundles wrapped in pink and blue. My knees nearly buckled. I pressed both hands against the window, leaving bloody prints on the glass. A nurse appeared on the other side of the glass, her eyes widening at the sight of me. She moved quickly toward a phone on the wall, her mouth forming urgent words I couldn't hear. I scanned the bassinets frantically, reading the name cards attached to each one. Sullivan, Chen, Rodriguez, Martinez, Thompson, Washington. My eyes raced across every card, searching for Phillips. Nothing. The guards crashed through the doors behind me. I ran along the windows, my hands sliding across the glass, leaving crimson streaks. More bassinets, more names: Adams, Brooks, Freeman, Patel. None of them mine. None of them carrying the name of the child I'd felt moving inside me for 9 months. The child whose heartbeat I'd heard just yesterday during my last checkup before the emergency surgery. Strong hands locked around my upper arms. I thrashed, my elbow connecting with something solid. A grunt. The grip loosened on one side. I twisted free and pressed my face against the glass, searching the tiny faces for some recognition. Some cellular memory that would tell me which one was mine. "She's not in there." My mother's voice came from directly behind me, quiet and final. I went completely still. The guards maintained their grip, but I barely felt them. I turned my head slowly, blood dripping from my fingertips onto the spotless floor. My mother stood in the corridor, her hands folded at her waist, her expression carved from granite. "What did you do?" The words scraped out of my throat like ground glass. She met my eyes without flinching. "I signed the papers. The adoption was finalized 3 hours ago." The world tilted sideways. I felt my knees buckle, and the guard's grip shifted from restraint to support. My vision tunneled, the corridor narrowing to just my mother's face, those familiar features now belonging to a stranger. Bile rose in my throat, burning and bitter. I wrenched myself forward. The guards struggled to hold me, their shoes squeaking against the linoleum as I dragged them closer to me. My surgical gown twisted around my legs. Fresh warmth spread across my abdomen where the stitches were tearing, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the howling emptiness that had opened inside my chest. "You had no right!" My voice came out stronger than I expected, echoing off the sterile walls. "No right." My mother's jaw tightened. She took one measured step backward, maintaining the distance between us. Her patent leather handbag hung in the crook of her elbow, navy blue and perfectly polished. The same handbag she'd carried to church every Sunday of my childhood. The same handbag she'd clutched while telling me I was making the biggest mistake of my life when I refused to name the father. "I had every right," she said. "As your next of kin and medical proxy." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere down the hall, a baby cried. My milk let down instantly, 2 dark circles spreading across the thin hospital gown. The guards noticed and looked away, their discomfort palpable in how their grips loosened slightly. I lunged, not at my mother this time, but toward the sound of that crying infant. My legs tangled in the gown, and I went down hard on my knees. The impact sent shockwaves through my pelvis. The guards released me entirely, stepping back as if burned. Blood soaked through the bandages, a crimson bloom spreading across white cotton. I crawled. The floor was cold against my palms, my knees. Each movement forward sent glass shards of agony through my surgical site. I could hear my mother's heels clicking behind me, keeping pace but not approaching. The nursery window stretched endlessly ahead. My fingers left smeared prints on the floor, mixing blood and sweat and the clear fluid leaking from my breasts. A pair of white shoes appeared in my path. Crepe soles, practical laces. I looked up slowly, past blue scrubs to a face I recognized from the delivery room. The nurse who'd held my hand while they administered the emergency anesthesia. She crouched down, her movements slow and deliberate. "Mrs. Phillips signed the consent forms while you were in recovery." Her voice was soft, meant to be soothing. It made me want to tear something apart with my bare hands. "I never consented." I pushed myself up to sitting, swaying with the effort. "I never agreed to anything." The nurse glanced past me to where my mother stood. Some wordless communication passed between them. The nurse's expression shifted, settling into professional neutrality, and I understood with perfect clarity that they'd discussed this. Planned it. My mother had made arrangements while I lay unconscious on the operating table. My daughter being lifted from my body while I couldn't even open my eyes. I grabbed the nurse's ankle. My grip was weak, pathetic really, but she froze anyway. "Which family? What's their name?" She carefully extracted her leg from my grasp and stood. "That information is confidential." My mother's shoes came into view beside the nurse's. Navy blue pumps with a modest heel, the same color as her handbag, her Sunday suit, her certain righteousness. I stared at those shoes, unable to look up, unable to see the face of the woman who'd carried me in her own womb 65 years ago. "You did this because I wouldn't tell you who the father was," I said to those shoes. "I did this because you're 65 years old." Her voice was crisp, matter of fact. "Because you have no husband, no prospects, and no business raising a child at your age." I planted my palms on the floor and pushed. The movement reopened something inside me. I felt it tear, felt the gush of warmth that followed. The nurse made a sharp sound and reached for me, but I batted her hands away. I got one foot under me, then the other, rose to standing through sheer force of will. The corridor swayed. I pressed one hand against the wall to steady myself, leaving another bloody handprint on the pale yellow paint. My mother hadn't moved. She stood there with her handbag and her sensible shoes and her absolute conviction that she'd done the right thing. I took one step toward her, another. She held her ground. The guards shifted nervously behind me, uncertain whether to intervene. Blood ran down my legs, pooling in my paper slippers. "I will find her." Each word came out clean and sharp. "I don't care how long it takes. I will find my daughter. And when I do, I will make sure she knows exactly what you are." My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Doubt, maybe, or fear. Then it was gone, replaced by that impenetrable certainty. "Security needs to escort you back to your room," she said. "You're bleeding everywhere." The guards moved in. This time, I didn't fight them. I let them turn me around, let them support my weight as my legs finally gave out completely. As they half carried me past the nursery windows, I turned my head one last time. All those tiny faces. One of them had my eyes, my hands, my blood. 3 hours ago, my mother had said. The adoption was finalized 3 hours ago. That meant the family had already taken her. My daughter was already gone, carried out of this hospital by strangers while I lay drugged and helpless 1 floor above. Write unique plot with 80% action, description, 20% dialogue. They strapped me to the bed this time, leather restraints around my wrists and ankles, the kind they used for psychiatric patients. A nurse with gray streaks in her auburn hair checked my vital signs without meeting my eyes. The blood had stopped flowing, but the sheets beneath me were already stained through. She worked in silence, replacing IV bags and adjusting monitors. When she finally left, she locked the door from the outside. I lay there watching the ceiling tiles blur in and out of focus. My body screamed for rest, for healing. My mind spun in circles, calculating distances and possibilities. 3 hours. The family could be anywhere within 3 hours of this hospital. North toward Boston, west into the mountains, south toward the coast. My daughter reduced to a radius on an invisible map. The medication they'd pumped into me pulled at the edges of consciousness. I fought it, digging my fingernails into my palms hard enough to break skin. Pain kept me alert. Pain kept me planning. Footsteps approached outside. Multiple sets. I turned my head as the door opened. A doctor entered first, young, Asian, with wire-rimmed glasses and a clipboard clutched against his chest like armor. Behind him came my mother, and behind her, someone I hadn't expected. My sister Ruth. She'd aged since I'd seen her last. 5 years, maybe 6. Her hair had gone completely silver, pulled back in the same tight bun our mother favored. But her eyes held something different than the righteousness burning in our mother's face. Guilt, maybe. Or pity. "The doctor wants to explain your condition," my mother said, positioning herself at the foot of my bed. The doctor cleared his throat. "Ms. Phillips, you've suffered severe hemorrhaging. We had to perform emergency surgery while you were under sedation. Your uterus—" "I don't care about my uterus." My voice came out hoarse. "I care about my baby." He flinched, glancing at my mother. She gave him a small nod. Permission to continue lying. "There were complications during delivery. The infant required immediate specialized care. The decision was made." "By her," I said, lifting my chin toward my mother. "While I was unconscious and couldn't stop her." Ruth shifted her weight, her purse sliding down her shoulder. She caught it, clutched it against her side. Our mother's hand shot out and gripped her elbow, a warning. The doctor backed toward the door. I'll return to check on you this evening. Please try to rest. He fled. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving me alone with them, with the two women who'd grown from the same soil I had, watered by the same brutal faith. Ruth knows the family, my mother said. Everything in me went still. Even the pain receded, replaced by a crystalline focus that made every detail sharp. The way Ruth's fingers tightened on her purse, the slight shake in her shoulders, the fact that she still wouldn't look at me directly. You set it up, I whispered. Ruth's mouth opened, closed. She took a breath that made her whole body shudder. They're good people, she finally said. Church-going, stable. The husband works in insurance. The wife teaches kindergarten. They have a house with a yard and... I don't want their resume. I pulled against the restraints, feeling the leather bite into my torn skin. I want their name, their address. You're not getting either, my mother cut in. The adoption is closed, legally sealed. Even if you had money for lawyers, which you don't, you couldn't touch it. Ruth took a step closer to the bed. My mother's hand was still on her elbow, but she pulled free. Her shoes squeaked on the linoleum as she moved to my side. Up close, I could see the fine lines around her eyes, the tremor in her hands. I held her, Ruth said softly, before they took her. I held your baby girl. Something hot and violent surged through my chest. What did she look like? She had your nose, your chin. Ruth's voice cracked. All her fingers and toes, 7 pounds, 4 ounces. They wrapped her in a pink blanket. What did they name her? Ruth's eyes finally met mine. In them I saw everything she wasn't saying. The address she'd memorized. The name she'd heard them speak. The guilt that would eat at her for whatever time remained. Stop, my mother commanded. But Ruth reached into her purse. My mother moved fast, grabbing her wrist, but Ruth was faster. She dropped something onto my chest. A small white card, the kind you'd find in a flower arrangement. It landed between my breasts and slid down to rest against the thin hospital gown. My mother lunged for it. I arched my back, creating a pocket with my body where the card disappeared into the sheets. Her fingers scrabbled against the fabric, but the restraints gave me an advantage. I could shift and flex in ways she couldn't anticipate without climbing onto the bed itself. Get it, my mother hissed at Ruth. Ruth backed away, shaking her head. I'm done. You'll burn for this, both of you. Then I'll burn, Ruth said, and walked out. The door clicked shut behind Ruth. My mother's breathing came hard and fast, her chest heaving beneath the purple blouse she'd worn to church that morning. The same church where she'd probably prayed for forgiveness while I'd been unconscious, bleeding, screaming a name no one would tell me. I worked my fingers beneath my body, feeling for the card. The paper was thick, expensive stock. It crinkled as I maneuvered it toward my bound hand. My mother watched every micro movement, her eyes tracking like a hawk following a field mouse. Give it to me. She didn't move closer. The restraints made her cautious. She'd have to lean over me, put her face near mine. After 47 years, she knew what I was capable of when cornered. The card slipped between my index and middle finger. I curled them, securing it. My mother's jaw clenched so hard I heard her teeth grind. You don't want that information, she said. You think you do, but you don't. I said nothing. The card was small enough to conceal in my palm if I could just rotate my wrist another inch. The leather restraint bit into my skin as I twisted. Something warm trickled down, blood or sweat, I couldn't tell. My mother pulled a chair across the floor. The metal legs shrieked against linoleum. She positioned it between me and the door, then sat with her purse in her lap, hands folded over its clasp. A sentry, a guard, a woman who'd orchestrated the theft of my child and now intended to maintain control of the aftermath. "They're good people," she said. "Christian people. They can give her everything you can't." "Her name?" My voice came out steady despite the rage building behind my sternum. "What's her name?" "That's not your concern anymore." I yanked hard against the right restraint. The bed frame rattled. My mother flinched but didn't stand. The leather held firm, but I felt something shift. Not the buckle, but the metal bracket bolted to the frame. They'd installed these restraints quickly, probably at her request. Hospital maintenance, rush job, imperfect hardware. "The family asked for privacy," my mother continued. "It was in the agreement." "What agreement? I didn't sign anything." "I'm your next of kin. I had medical power of attorney while you were incapacitated." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was explaining a grocery list. "The adoption was legal, final. There's nothing you can do." I pulled again, harder. The bracket groaned. My mother's eyes darted to my wrist, then back to my face. She stood slowly, setting her purse on the chair. When she moved toward the bed, I went still. She reached for my hand, the one clutching the card. I let her take it, let her fingers close around mine. She pulled, expecting resistance. Instead, I released every muscle, making my arm dead weight. She stumbled backward, off balance, and I used that split second to whip my other arm forward. The bracket tore free from the bed frame with a metallic crack. My left hand, still bound by leather but no longer anchored, swung in a wide arc. The metal bracket caught my mother across the cheekbone. She went down hard, her hips slamming into the chair. The purse tumbled, spilling contents across the floor. Lipstick, tissues, her Bible with the cracked leather cover, a bottle of pills, and photographs. At least a dozen, scattered like playing cards. I leveraged my free arm against the mattress and worked on the other restraint. My mother groaned, touching her face. Blood seeped between her fingers. She tried to gather the photographs, crawling on hands and knees, but I could see them clearly now. A nursery with yellow walls. A white crib with a mobile of fabric stars. A rocking chair by a window. Each photo showed a different angle of the same room, taken recently. The timestamp in the corner read dates from this week. "You've been watching them," I said. My mother's hand shot out, trying to collect the evidence. I kicked, my heel connecting with her forearm. She cried out and pulled back. The restraint on my right hand finally loosened enough for me to slip my thumb through. I yanked it free and swung my legs over the side of the bed. She scrambled backward, leaving the photographs. I bent down, ignoring the wave of dizziness, and gathered them. My hands shook as I flipped through the images. The nursery. A backyard with a swing set. The front of a house, brick, 2 stories, black shutters. A number barely visible on the mailbox, 847. The last photo stopped my breath. A woman in the driveway, holding a bundle wrapped in pink. The angle was wrong for a clear view of the baby's face, but I could see dark hair, a tiny fist emerging from the blanket. The woman was maybe 35, blonde, smiling down at what she held, at who she held. "Where is this?" My voice didn't sound like my own. My mother pulled herself up using the chair. Blood ran down her neck, staining her collar. "You can't have her back. The law." "Where is this?" She pressed her lips together. I stood, and she actually retreated toward the door. 47 years she'd controlled me with silence, with shame, with the authority of motherhood. But I'd just given birth. I'd felt life tear its way out of my body. I'd woken to empty arms and lies. I was a mother now, too. I grabbed her purse and dumped it completely, shaking it until the last items fell. A set of keys landed on top of the pile. Attached to the ring was a small tag, the kind locksmiths give you. An address was written in her careful handwriting. 847 Pinewood Drive, Riverside. My mother lunged for the keys. I swept them up and backed toward the window. The IV stand crashed over as I moved, saline bag bursting, liquid spreading across the floor. She slipped in it, caught herself against the wall. "You walk out of here, you'll regret it," she said. "They'll say you're unstable, unfit. They'll make sure you never—" I walked past her and opened the door. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly ahead, fluorescent lights burning into my vision. Each step sent pain radiating through my pelvis, through the torn tissues still bleeding beneath the thin hospital gown. I pressed one hand against the wall for support, the other clutching those keys so tightly the metal teeth bit into my palm. A nurse emerged from a room 30 feet ahead. I turned immediately, pushing through the door to the stairwell. The concrete steps seemed to multiply as I looked down. 2 floors. Might as well have been 20. I gripped the railing and descended sideways, one foot joining the other on each step before attempting the next. Blood soaked through the pad they'd given me, warm and sticky against my thighs. The hospital gown wasn't enough. I needed clothes. I needed a car. I needed to get to Riverside before my mother made a phone call that would end this. The ground floor stairwell door opened onto a maintenance corridor. Carts of cleaning supplies lined the walls. I grabbed a janitor's jacket from a hook, blue and oversized, and pulled it over the gown. A lost and found box sat on one of the carts. I dug through it, finding sweatpants with a drawstring. Getting them on required leaning against the wall, lifting one leg at a time while my vision swam with pain. The service exit led to the employee parking lot. Cold November air hit my face, cleared some of the fog from my brain. I had keys to an address, but no vehicle. My own car was home, wherever my mother had told them to tow it from the hospital lot when I was unconscious. A silver sedan sat in the closest spot marked visitor. Through the window, I could see a phone charging cable, a coffee cup in the holder, a hospital badge on the dash. The visitor sticker on the windshield was dated today. I tried the keys in my hand. Wrong car. I moved to the next vehicle, a red truck. Wrong again. The third attempt, a blue Honda, the lock clicked open. Someone shouted behind me. I turned to see a security guard at the service exit, radio already at his mouth. No time for hesitation. I threw myself into the driver's seat, jammed the key into the ignition. The engine caught immediately. The guard ran toward me, one hand reaching for his belt. I threw the car into reverse, tires squealing as I backed out. He had to jump aside as I shifted to drive and accelerated toward the exit. The parking arm was down. I drove through it, wood splintering across the hood. Traffic on the main road forced me to brake hard. My body screamed at the impact, fresh blood flowing. I could feel it pooling beneath me on the seat. A car horn blared as I pulled into traffic, cutting off a delivery truck. The GPS on the dashboard showed Riverside was 40 minutes away. I programmed in the address with shaking fingers. 847 Pinewood Drive appeared on the screen, a blue line marking the route. 40 minutes. I could last 40 minutes. The bleeding accelerated at every stop sign, every red light where I had to press the brake. My vision started tunneling at the edges. I rolled down the window, let the cold air slap me alert. The radio was playing something cheerful and mindless. I turned it off, needing the silence to concentrate on staying conscious. A police siren wailed somewhere behind me. I checked the rearview mirror, but couldn't see any lights yet. The hospital would have called it in by now. Stolen car, patient endangerment, possible psychotic break. That's what my mother would have told them. That I'd lost my mind. That I was dangerous. My phone was back in the hospital room. No way to call anyone, not that I knew who I'd call. My husband thought I was at a conference. My friends thought I was visiting my mother for the week. The web of lies had been so carefully constructed that no one would look for me until it was too late. The siren grew louder. I took the next exit, following the GPS through residential streets instead of the highway. The blue line recalculated, adding 8 minutes to the journey. Couldn't be helped. A stop sign appeared too quickly. I braked and felt something tear inside, a fresh wave of agony that made me gasp. The windshield seemed to tilt. I gripped the steering wheel harder, forced my eyes to focus. Not yet. Not when I was this close. The GPS announced the turn onto Pinewood Drive. I made the corner and the houses changed. Larger properties, wider spaces between them. Trees lined the street, their bare branches creating patterns against the gray sky. House numbers counted up. 823, 829, 835. There, 847. A 2-story colonial with white siding and black shutters. A minivan in the driveway. Same silver color as in the photos. Toys scattered across the front lawn. A plastic slide, a wagon, a tricycle too big for a newborn, but perfect for other children. I parked across the street, engine still running. The house looked peaceful, normal. A wreath hung on the front door. Curtains were open on the first-floor windows, showing a living room with comfortable furniture. My daughter was inside that house. I reached for the door handle and the world tilted sideways. The blood loss was catching up, my body finally acknowledging what I'd done to it. I blinked hard, trying to clear my vision. The steering wheel felt distant beneath my hands. Movement at the house. The front door opened. Story block 7. A woman stepped onto the porch, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, jeans, and a sweater. She bent down to pick up the scattered toys, gathering them into the wagon with practiced efficiency. Mid-30s, maybe, moving with the casual confidence of someone in her own space. I pushed the car door open. The ground seemed farther away than it should be. My feet hit the pavement and my knees buckled. I caught myself against the door frame, metal cold and solid against my palm. The wound in my side screamed. I could feel wetness spreading, the bandage finally failing completely. The woman looked up at the sound. Her expression shifted from mild curiosity to concern. She set down the wagon handle and took a step toward the edge of her lawn. "Are you okay?" I pushed away from the car, 3 steps onto the street. The asphalt felt uneven beneath my feet, though I knew it was level. My body wasn't processing information correctly anymore. Everything filtered through a haze of pain and blood loss. "I need to talk to you." My voice came out hoarse. She moved closer to the curb but didn't cross into the street. Cautious, smart. Her eyes scanned me, taking in whatever she could see. Probably my pallor, the way I was holding my side, the desperation that must have been written across my face. "Do you need me to call someone? An ambulance?" 4 more steps. I was in the middle of the street now. A car approached from the south, still 2 blocks away but closing. I kept moving. The blonde woman's face came into sharper focus. She had kind eyes, laugh lines at the corners, the sort of face that showed up in family photo albums. The car passed behind me, close enough that the wind ruffled my jacket. The woman's eyes widened. "Please, you shouldn't be..." "Rachel Peterson, That's you, isn't it? She froze. Her hand moved to her pocket, probably reaching for a phone. The protective instinct of a mother. I knew that instinct. Had felt it once, 48 years ago, before they'd taken everything from me. I reached her driveway. Each breath felt like inhaling glass. The toys on her lawn swam in my vision, bright plastic colors that seemed too vivid, too sharp. My shadow stretched long across the concrete, distorted and wrong. My daughter is in your house. Rachel's face changed. Understanding flooded her features, followed immediately by something else. Fear. She backed toward her front door, maintaining distance. You need to leave, right now. The porch steps loomed ahead. 3 of them. They might as well have been a mountain. I gripped the railing and pulled myself up. The metal post bit into my palm. My legs shook with each step, muscles turning liquid. I'm not leaving without her. Rachel's hand came out of her pocket, phone already unlocked. Her thumb moved across the screen, fast, practiced. The police are on their way. Second step. The world tilted 20 degrees to the left. I compensated, shifting my weight, gripping the railing so hard my knuckles went white. Something warm ran down my leg beneath my jeans. More blood. Too much blood. You don't understand. My mother, she told them I was dead. She gave away my baby while I was... The third step collapsed beneath me. Not literally. My leg just stopped working. I went down hard, catching myself on the porch surface with my free hand. The impact sent shockwaves through my injured side. I heard myself make a sound, something between a gasp and a scream. The front door opened. A man appeared, tall and broad-shouldered. He positioned himself between Rachel and me, one hand stretched back to keep her behind him. Stay there. Don't come any closer. I tried to push myself up. My arms trembled. Blood smeared across the porch boards beneath me, dark against the gray paint. The edges of my vision started going dark, little patches of nothing eating away at the world. Her name! I coughed, tasted copper. Her name is supposed to be Angela. Angela Phillips. Rachel made a soft sound behind her husband. He didn't move, but something shifted in his stance. Not quite so aggressive, more uncertain. We adopted through proper channels, everything legal. She's mine. The words came out barely above a whisper. She's my daughter, and you stole 48 years. Sirens in the distance, growing louder. 2, maybe 3 vehicles from the sound of it, coming fast. I got one knee under me. The porch swayed like a ship's deck. My hand left a red print on the boards where I'd been lying. Rachel stepped to the side, getting a better look at me around her husband's protective bulk. Her face had gone pale. Trevor, she's bleeding. She's bleeding a lot. Block 8. I pushed up to standing. My legs felt like wet rope. The porch tilted beneath me, or maybe that was just my body trying to shut down. Blood had soaked through the makeshift bandage at my side, running in thin streams down my hip. The sirens were close now, maybe 2 blocks away. Trevor, that's what Rachel had called him, shifted his weight, blocking the doorway more completely. His jaw was set hard, but his eyes kept flicking down to the blood pooling at my feet. I'm not leaving. My voice came out stronger than I felt. Not without answers. Rachel pushed past her husband before he could stop her. She moved down the steps, careful to stay out of arm's reach. Her face had that look people get when they're watching something terrible happen, horrified, but unable to look away. She wrapped her arms around herself. My mother told me you were unconscious for 3 days after the birth. The words tumbled out of me. When I woke up, she said the baby didn't make it. She had a tiny white coffin. There was a funeral. I held that empty coffin at my daughter's grave for 48 years. The sirens cut off mid-wail. Car doors slammed in quick succession. 3, 4, 5 of them. Footsteps pounded up the sidewalk. Radio chatter crackled through the morning air. "Ma'am, step away from the residence!" A male voice, sharp with authority. I didn't turn. Couldn't take my eyes off Rachel. She was crying now, silent tears tracking down her face. Her hand had moved to her throat, fingers pressed against the hollow there, like she was trying to hold something in. "Police! I need you to show me your hands." Heavy boots hit the porch steps behind me. I raised both hands slowly, palms out. The movement made my side scream. Fresh blood welled up, soaking through my shirt in a dark bloom. My knees started to buckle. Trevor lunged forward. Not at me, to catch me. His hands grabbed my shoulders, just as my legs gave out completely. He lowered me down to the porch boards with surprising gentleness for such a big man. "She's hurt bad," he said over his shoulder. "Need medical now." More boots on the steps. Hands on me, checking for weapons, I realized dimly. Professional, efficient. One of them found the gun at my back, removed it carefully. Another was cutting away my bloody shirt, exposing the wound underneath. "Knife wound looks like, needs immediate transport." Someone pressed gauze against my side. The pressure sent white-hot pain exploding through my torso. I arched up, gasping. Strong hands held me down. "Stay still. You're going to be okay." But I wasn't looking at the officer trying to treat me. I was looking at Rachel. She'd dropped to her knees on the lawn, hands covering her face. Her whole body shook with sobs. Trevor moved to her, wrapped his arms around her shoulders. A gurney appeared. They lifted me onto it with practiced efficiency, strapping me down. An oxygen mask went over my face. Someone was starting an IV in my arm. The world had gone fuzzy at the edges, sounds muffled like I was underwater. Rachel stood up suddenly. She came toward the gurney as they were loading it into the ambulance, Trevor right beside her. Her face was blotchy from crying, mascara smeared in dark streaks. "Wait." She reached out, but didn't touch me. "I need to know, is it true? Are you really?" "Yes." The word came out muffled through the oxygen mask. I pulled it aside. "I'm your mother." An EMT tried to push the mask back in place. I batted his hand away weakly. Blood loss was making everything swimmy, distant. But I needed her to hear this. "My mother's name was Angela Phillips. The woman who raised you, what's her name?" Rachel's face crumpled. "Angela Morgan. She said my birth mother died in childbirth." The mask went back over my face. They were lifting the gurney, sliding it into the ambulance. I turned my head, keeping Rachel in sight as long as I could. She was standing frozen on the lawn, Trevor's arm around her waist. The morning sun backlit her hair, turning it into a golden halo. My mother had taken my baby, given her away to strangers. Told us both lies that lasted nearly 5 decades, and I'd killed her for it. Stabbed her in the kitchen where she'd made my breakfast for 65 years. Left her bleeding out on the linoleum while I drove here with my own blood soaking into the car seat. The ambulance doors started to swing shut. Through the narrowing gap, I saw police officers moving toward the house. Saw Trevor pulling Rachel back, protecting her even now. Saw her face, my daughter's face, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. The doors closed with a metallic thud. The siren kicked on overhead, deafening in the enclosed space. The EMT was doing something with the IV, adjusting the flow. His lips moved, but I couldn't hear him over the noise. My vision narrowed to a tunnel, then to a pinpoint, then to nothing at all. The fluorescent lights burned white-hot above me when my eyes finally opened. My throat felt like someone had shoved steel wool down it. Restraints bit into my wrists. Soft fabric, but restraints nonetheless. A heart monitor beeped steadily somewhere to my left. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. My abdomen throbbed with each breath, a deep ache that radiated through my entire core. I tried to shift position, and the pain flared sharp enough to make me gasp. "Don't move!" The voice came from the corner. A uniformed officer sat in a plastic chair, arms crossed over his barrel chest. Young guy, maybe 30, with tired eyes that had seen too much already. "You're under arrest for murder. Soon as the doctors clear you, you're going to county." I turned my head away, staring at the bland beige wall instead. Angela's face kept flashing behind my eyelids, her shocked expression when the knife went in, the way she'd reached for me even as she fell. My mother, my monster, both at once. Footsteps in the hallway made the officer straighten. A nurse entered, short, efficient, checking my vitals without making eye contact. She adjusted something on the IV pole and left without speaking. Professional distance from the murderer in room 4112. 3 days passed like that. Meals came on trays. Doctors examined my wound with clinical detachment. The officer changed shifts with another one, a woman with gray streaks in her black hair, who read paperback mysteries and never looked at me directly. On the 4th day, a different visitor arrived. Rachel stood in the doorway like she might bolt at any second. She wore jeans and a cardigan, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. The bruises on Trevor's face had probably faded by now, but hers were internal, invisible except in the way she held herself, shoulders hunched, arms wrapped around her middle. The officer started to stand, but Rachel showed him something on her phone. He settled back down, watching us both with hawk eyes. She walked to the foot of my bed and gripped the metal railing. Her knuckles went white. "I did a DNA test," she said. "Rushed results. You were telling the truth." I didn't say anything. What was there to say? "Yes, I'm your mother who abandoned you." "No, I didn't abandon you. My mother stole you. Either way, I'd killed the woman who raised her." Rachel pulled an envelope from her purse and set it on the blanket near my restrained hand. Hospital corners kept the sheets tight enough that the envelope sat at an angle, sliding slowly toward the edge. "Angela Morgan died yesterday. Heart attack." Rachel's voice stayed flat, emotionless. "The doctor said it was from stress, learning about everything." Another death on my hands. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. "I spent 5 decades looking for you." The words scraped out of my damaged throat. "Hired investigators, put up flyers, joined every registry. Your adopted mother moved 3 times in the first 10 years. Changed her name twice. She didn't want to be found." Rachel flinched like I'd struck her. "She loved me. I'm sure she did. She was a good mother. Better than I could have been." The admission tasted like acid. "I was 15 when I had you, scared, alone. My mother said you died. I held a funeral, buried an empty casket." Rachel's hand moved to her stomach, an unconscious protective gesture. "I'm pregnant, 3 months." The heart monitor's beeping stuttered as my pulse jumped. A grandchild, another generation. The envelope had slid close enough now that I could see Rachel's handwriting on the front. Angela Phillips. "That's why I came," Rachel continued. "Not for you, for my baby." He deserves to know where he comes from. All of it, even the ugly parts. She turned toward the door, then paused. Her profile looked so much like mine at that age, it hurt to see. There's a storage unit key in that envelope. Angela Phillips things, pictures, documents, my birth certificate with your name crossed out. Letters you wrote to adoption agencies? Rachel's jaw clenched. I can't forgive you for killing them, either of them. But my son will know the truth. She walked out without looking back. The officer shifted in his chair, adjusting his duty belt. Outside the window, storm clouds gathered dark and heavy on the horizon. I worked my fingers until I could just barely touch the envelope's edge. It took 5 minutes of careful manipulation to drag it close enough to grip. My name was written in a young hand. Rachel's teenage script, probably from when she first got those documents. Inside, a small brass key on a plain ring, a sticky note with an address, and a photograph. Me at 16, holding an infant with a pink blanket. My face glowed with joy I'd forgotten I was capable of feeling. I'd killed for answers, destroyed lives for truth. And now I had it, all of it, spread across a hospital bed in a room that smelled like death and antiseptic. The storm broke outside. Rain hammered against the window in sheets. Story block 1010. The community garden stretched before me in rows of late autumn green, the rich scent of turned earth mixing with wood smoke from nearby chimneys. I knelt beside the raised bed, marked with a small painted sign, Angela's plot, and worked my fingers through the soil, pulling weeds from around the lettuce seedlings. My hands moved slower than they had 6 months ago. The bullet damage had left permanent stiffness in my left shoulder, a constant reminder that gravity always collects its debts. A child's laughter echoed across the garden. I looked up to see a boy, maybe 3 years old, racing between the tomato stakes with his arms spread like airplane wings. Rachel walked behind him, one hand resting on her pregnant belly, the other carrying a basket of harvesting shears. She'd moved to the city 2 months ago, not to be near me, she'd made that clear, but because the job at the nonprofit legal clinic was too good to pass up. The boy stumbled on a garden hose. Rachel caught him with practiced ease, steadying him without breaking stride. She didn't look in my direction as they moved toward their plot 3 rows over. We existed in the same space like parallel lines, close but never touching. I turned back to my weeding, pulling a stubborn dandelion root from the soil. The therapist I saw twice a week said healing wasn't linear. Some days I could breathe without feeling the weight of what I'd done. Other days, the memory of my mother's face as she died crushed the air from my lungs entirely. Footsteps crunched on the gravel path behind me. I knew Rachel's gait by now, measured, deliberate, like she was always calculating the safest route forward. The housing coordinator called, she said without preamble. There's a unit available in the building near the clinic. Better neighborhood than where I'm at now. I kept my eyes on the soil, pulling another weed. That's good. The deposit is steep, first and last month. Her shadow fell across my hands. I'm not asking for money. I wiped dirt on my jeans and reached for the watering can. The metal handle was cold against my palm. I know. Rachel shifted her weight. The boy called out something about butterflies, his voice bright and unburdened by the history that hung between his mother and me. She turned her head toward him, then back. I signed up for the parenting support group at the clinic, she said. They have childcare during meetings. Might be good for him to socialize more. I poured water slowly around each lettuce plant, watching it darken the soil. The storage unit Rachel had directed me to 6 months ago had contained everything my mother had hidden. Birth certificates, medical records, Letters I'd written as a terrified 16-year-old, begging to keep my baby. My mother had kept it all, even as she'd torn us apart. I'd donated most of it to a nonprofit that helped adopted children trace their origins. Some truths were too heavy to carry alone. "The support group sounds helpful," I said, setting down the can. Rachel's hand moved to her belly again, an unconscious protective gesture I recognized from somewhere deep in my own muscle memory. "The new baby's a girl, we found out last week." The information hit my chest like a stone. A granddaughter I'd never hold, never know. Another generation bearing the fractures I'd created. "Congratulations," I managed. She stood there a moment longer, her shadow stretching across the garden bed like a bridge neither of us knew how to cross. Then she walked away, calling to her son to come help her pick tomatoes. I worked until the sun dropped below the apartment buildings to the west, painting the garden in shades of amber and rust. My hands ached from the repetitive motion. My shoulder throbbed its familiar warning. But the lettuce bed was clear of weeds, the soil dark and rich and ready for whatever tried to grow. As I gathered my tools, I noticed something on the wooden border of my plot. A small toy airplane, blue plastic worn smooth at the edges. The boy must have dropped it while running past. I picked it up and turned it over in my palm, then walked to Rachel's plot and set it carefully on the edge of her raised bed where she'd see it. She was helping her son reach a high tomato, her hands steadying his small ones. She glanced over as I approached, then away. I didn't try to speak, just placed the plane where it belonged and walked back to gather my things. The bus ride home took 40 minutes through neighborhoods slowly gentrifying. Old corner stores giving way to coffee shops with names like Brew Theory and The Daily Grind. I watched the city transform block by block, thinking about how places change while still carrying ghosts of what they'd been. My apartment was small, a studio in a building that smelled like curry and cigarette smoke, despite the no-smoking policy. I'd decorated it simply. A bed, a table, 2 chairs, a bookshelf holding volumes on restorative justice and trauma recovery. No photographs. Some wounds needed space more than memory. I made tea and sat by the window, watching streetlights flicker on against the gathering dusk. My laptop sat open on the table, the screen showing the volunteer application I'd been working on for 3 weeks, a literacy program at the women's prison across town, the same prison that had held me for 6 months while I awaited trial. The prosecutor had offered manslaughter with mitigating circumstances. My lawyer, a tired woman with kind eyes, had explained how the circumstances of my mother's deception might generate jury sympathy. How my documented mental state during the confrontation showed diminished capacity. How first-time offenders with serious medical conditions often received reduced sentences. I'd served 18 months, got out on good behavior and mandatory therapy. The judge's final words still echoed sometimes in quiet moments. "You can't kill your way to healing, Miss Phillips. You can only kill your way to more death." Now I've filled my days with small acts of maintenance. The garden, the therapy sessions, volunteer applications I might never complete. Rachel existed on the periphery of my world, like a planet in distant orbit, close enough to feel the gravitational pull, but never near enough to touch. My phone buzzed with a reminder. Therapy appointment tomorrow at 9. I marked it in my planner with careful handwriting, then closed the laptop and carried my tea to the window seat. Below, the city moved through its evening rhythms. A couple argued outside the bodega. A dog walker juggled 6 leashes with practiced expertise. Life continued its relentless forward motion whether we were ready or not. I thought about the girl Rachel was carrying. Another chance, another life unburdened by the weight of what I'd done. Maybe that was enough, to exist quietly on the edges, doing small good where I could, letting the next generation grow without my shadow falling across their path. The tea cooled in my hands. I drank it anyway, bitter and lukewarm, and watched night settle over the city like a blanket pulling itself across sleeping shoulders. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.